Hi, everyone. So in the slides, I would have just been showing you how to create a histogram in SPSS. And then I wanted to take this opportunity to just talk a little bit about how to edit graphs in SPSS, not just histograms, but basically any graph that you create. Because SPSS, whenever you ask for a graph, it's basically just going to select a bunch of defaults for you, and you might not like those defaults. You might want to change certain things about the way the graph looks. Especially if you're planning on taking the graph and then showing it to other people. If you actually want to put it in a publication or something like that, you probably want to have that ability to change certain things about the graphs to your liking. So we can use the same data set I was just working with in this lecture, the awkwardness data. So I'll start by just doing what I just showed you, make a histogram. So you're going to go to graphs and then histogram. Put that into variable and hit OK, and you get your histogram. Okay, so maybe you're happy with this, and then that's fine. You can just copy and paste it from there. You don't have to do anything. But again, you might want to change certain things about the way that this looks. So the first thing that sticks out to me, usually something I would end up changing on these graphs, is these numbers, X and Y axis labels, pretty small, pretty tiny. You might want to make those a little bit bigger so that they are easier to see. So anytime you want to change anything about the graph, first thing you need to do is this is your general output window. Just double click on the graph, and then that's going to bring up this separate window that they call the chart editor. So now you can do things to change your graph if you want. And how this is going to usually work is any part of the graph that you're trying to edit, you're going to start by just double clicking on it. So like I just said, maybe you want to change things about these numbers. You click once and you see that they're all kind of highlighted there. You get a little gray box around all of them, and then you can just double click and then open up this properties window. And this is where you can actually do things to edit. So we can start there. What if I just want to change the font size of my X or Y axis labels? You can just change that here. It's at an 8 now. Maybe make it a 10, a little bit bigger. Okay, a little bit easier to see. You can take it up to a 12. Okay, 12 looks pretty good. That should be easily legible for most people. And then you could even go and do the same thing on your Y-axis. So it's nice and matching. Take that up to a 12 as well. Apply. Okay, so there's one basic change that you can make on these graphs. That's the one I find myself doing probably most frequently in SPSS. But then other things as well. So one thing you might notice is about the scale of the variable that we're working with on the x-axis. So this awkwardness variable is the range of possible values is a 1 to 9. So we're not going to see any values that are a 0 or a 10, but you're seeing that there is a 0 and a 10 on your graph. So maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe you don't really need to show that range of values with values that are impossible for your variable, essentially, right? No one can score a 0 or 10 because it's just like a questionnaire where people are answering 1 through 9. So maybe it makes more sense to just show 1 through 9, something like that. Okay, so to do that, you just go to scale here. Sorry, Siri is trying to listen to me now. Go away, Siri. Okay. So in the scale, you can do things now like change the minimum and maximum values that you're seeing on the scale. So right now I'm on the y-axis, which I didn't want. I want to be on the x-axis, right? So we're interested in changing the x-axis maybe to, again, the values that people could actually score at, which is 1 to 9. So let's just make our minimum 1, maximum 9, and apply it. There you go. Okay, now that makes a little more sense, just showing the histogram for the values that people can actually score at. Other things beyond that, I would have also just talked about in the slides as you're working through this question of bins. So like, how many bins do you want in your histogram? How are you sort of lumping together possible values on the x-axis? So if it's something like this, 1 to 9 scale, you could probably just do this, just show like 1 bar for each possible value. Okay, so we just have 1 through 9, and then you're just getting a bar for each of those possible values. But what if you have a variable where it can take on possible values of like 0 to 100, something like that, right? So you're probably not going to want 100 different bars. That might not be the best way to visualize, to graph your data. So at that point, you might find yourself wanting to make decisions about how can I change the number of bins. And so now we're going to actually, instead of clicking on these values down here, that might seem like it would be the way to go for changing the number of bins, but for bin size, you actually click on the bars themselves. So just double click anywhere on these bars, and you'll get this window come up that says binning. So x-axis, maybe I don't like the number of bins on the x-axis. You can hit custom, and then you can change that to whatever number of bins you want, right? So maybe I want to do like 3 bins instead, if that makes sense for me. Probably wouldn't for this data. Like I said, you probably would want 9 bins, which was their default for this. Or maybe I want even more bins than this, right? If it's something that can take on like a 0.5 value, something like that, then maybe I want like 18 bins instead. Again, wouldn't really make sense for this variable, but just hypothetically in the future, if it does make sense for your variable, you could do that. So you could change the number of bins. You can also change the labels down here. So, you can see that we're not seeing the in-between values. Where is 2? Where is 4? You can also change the scale here. So under major increment, it's 2. Maybe I want to see all of my possible values, 1 through 9. So just make the increment goes up by 1 at a time now. Okay, and then you get that. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 9, all of those. So that's something else that you can kind of customize and change here. Those are the main things I want to show you for now. There's other stuff you can do. You can change the colors, double click on the bars, fill in borders, stuff like that. You have some customizability for. So all kinds of different things that you can change about your graphs, but those are the main ones I want to show you for now. And again, this is applicable not just to histograms, but pretty much any graph. Any graph, I'll teach you any graph that you get out of SPSS. You'll have these options for making edits in this way.